So with San Diego Comic Con coming up soon, we're probably going to get our first real information on Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is going to be this year's Arrowverse crossover. So I thought it would be fun to kind of talk about what characters we might see die in the Crisis, because it's definitely going to be the biggest Arrowverse crossover yet. It's going to be the biggest thing the shows have done, and I think there's no way we're going to get out of it without a couple deaths of characters. So I think the only crossover that we've actually had a character die in so far is Crisis on Earth X with Martin Stein, Firestorm. None of the other crossovers have really had a big death to impact the team, but I think if they're going to do it, Crisis needs to have a big impact. And, we already have a lot of possibilities and theories on who could die. There's a big character who everybody thinks is going to die in it. We've been getting teased that Barry Allen, the Flash, is going to die in it. But I just want to say there's going to be huge supporters for the Crisis on Infinite Earths comic series, so if you haven't read that, or if you're thinking about reading that before the crossover, then you might not want to watch this video, because I'm going to spoil all the deaths from it first off, so I can tell you who dies in that, so that we can kind of use that to think about who will die in the actual crossover. But yeah, so Crisis on Infinite Earths, it's a lore heavy comic. I reread it there, and I finished rereading it this morning, and I forgot how big and massive that comic is, just in terms of scale, just in terms of characters. It was the culmination of 50 years worth of DC comics. Like, everything from Action Comics issue 1, which introduced us to Superman, that was the beginning of the DC universe, in my opinion. Over the years, over the 40s and all that, we got introduced to all these characters, and Crisis on Infinite Earths is the culmination of all of that. The Crisis ends with Earth 2 Superman, who was the Superman from the original Action Comics. It just brings all of it together, and on top of the DC, the continuity back then was so complicated, it was so difficult to understand. There was so much weight with everything. You couldn't just pick up a comic and read it like you can do that today. The comics are so easy to get into today because of how much continuity is constantly cleared up. Back then, if you tried to pick up a comic, you wouldn't have understood anything, because the lore was so all over the place and they never really cleaned it up. Crisis on Infinite Earths was the first time DC tried to fix their continuity to make it easier for new readers to come in, and that was by destroying the multiverse and bringing every character onto Earth 1 and making it easy to understand who everyone was. Like, pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths, DC Comics was just a mess in terms of continuity and lore, and it was just so hard to understand everything. That said, the comic series had basically every slightly big DC superhero or DC villain of those 50 years. Anyone who was kind of well known, even the most obscure characters, showed up in some form or another in that 12-issue series. But that said, in terms of big characters, not an awful lot of big characters died. We know of the two biggest ones, which was Kara, Supergirl, and Barry Allen, the Flash. They were the two biggest characters who died in that crossover. And Elseworlds even teased that, Elseworlds being the last Arrowverse crossover, by Oliver saying that, Oliver and Clark both saying that in the Book of Destiny, Kara and Barry were supposed to die in Elseworlds, which was kind of teasing like, oh, these are the people who die in Crisis on Infinite Earths. We also have been getting teased that Barry vanishes in the Crisis since season 1 of The Flash, which is teasing his death. But they were the two biggest characters who died in the comics, and besides them, not an awful lot of big characters died. I'm just going to do a quick rundown of some of the characters, because most of the people who died in this crossover were people on different Earths who weren't that well known, so there's not an awful lot of people you'll recognize, because they were characters from the 80s and the 70s who even these days aren't that well known, but there were some pretty notable people in there, such as the Crime Syndicate of Earth 3, who are the evil Justice League of Earth 3, like Ultraman, Owlman, Superwoman, Power Ring, Johnny Quick. They all died, including their Lex Luthor and that Earth's Lois Lane. Kid Psycho from the Legion of Superheroes. The Monitor himself died. Donald Hall, who was Dove of Hawk and Dove, he was actually in Titans. You may remember he was Hank's brother. Aquagirl from the Teen Titans. We had Lex Luthor, Green Arrow, the Huntress, and Robin, all from Earth 2, die. The superheroes Cole and Sunburst. Then a bunch of villains like Icicle, Malador, the Sam Shutter, Mirror Master, Angleman, Bug-Eyed Bandit, the iteration of Clayface at the time, Ten-Eyed Man, and the Mermaid Laurie Lamaris. That's pretty much the only semi-well-known people who died. And not an awful lot of those people exist inside the Arrowverse. Like, the Monitor exists, obviously. We have a Green Arrow, we have a Huntress, we have a Mirror Master, and we have a Bug-Eyed Bandit. That's kind of it. But honestly, I don't think Crisis, I think we're going to have people die, but I don't think they're going to get to have many people die because it's the Arrowverse. They don't really kill many people, and they very rarely shake things up, so I can't see them killing off a bunch of big characters to shake things off. I think Barry's fine, I think Supergirl's fine, because I no way they're killing them off. All of them, both The Flash and Supergirl, have at least 2 more seasons in them each, probably 3, I'd imagine. So I think they're fine, obviously. Batwoman's not going to die. I don't think they're going to kill many of the legends. They might kill 1 or 2 legends, but it's not going to be big characters. It's not going to be a Heatwave. It's not going to be a Sarah Lance. Not going to be Constantine. If they kill any of the legends, it'll be probably like... I could see them killing Nate. I could see them killing Zari. Well, we're not going to have Zari in Crisis because in current Legends she's kind of off. I can't remember if it was a different version of her or if she never existed. But basically she's not going to be in Legends from the get-go this season, and since Legends technically starts with Crisis, they can't really tie her into it. But I could see them killing Nate. I could see them killing Charlie. Any of those smaller characters. And then Oliver. But then you've got a lot of the minor characters in these shows, like Martian Manhunter, Brainiac 5, Mon-El, Cisco, Caitlin, then the Team Arrow crew like Diggle, Curtis, all these guys. You know, you gotta think, are they gonna kill many of them? And I think, well, we're not gonna see many of them. I think we could definitely see 1 or 2 of these side characters from the shows take a hit. Maybe even 1 character from each show to make Crisis feel like it really had an impact, like a lot of characters really died, or like, not that a lot of characters died, just that it really affected it, because a habit these shows have is that after the crossover is over, everyone kind of moves on, they forget about it, they make a joke about it in their mid-season final, and we never really hear about it again. Any time that the crossover is brought up again, it'll be brought up as a joke, not as a plot point. I think Crisis is going to be the first one that really feels an effect throughout the seasons, and since we know that Arrow Season 8 is going to be heavily focused on Crisis, well, at least I hope, then I'm hoping that the back half is going to be the same, with a character or 2 dying, and we feel the impact of that throughout the season. So I think it's possible we could see Cisco die. My only problem with that is because Cisco, I thought, was leaving the show. It turns out he's coming back, at least Danielle Panabaker said on Twitter that she was seeing him and Grant Gustin the day they're supposed to start filming, so which implies that he's going to be back for Season 6. The problem is he doesn't have his powers. So if he stays powerless, he's not really going to be out in the field, and I couldn't see him dying in this, so it's possible Cisco won't die, but I think if they are going to kill off a Flash character, it's going to be Cisco or Caitlin. In terms of Supergirl, I could definitely see them killing off Brainiac 5. I think Nia's fine. I think John Jones is fine. But Brainiac 5 is fine. I think Alex is fine too. In terms of Arrow, I think... See, Arrow's another complicated one. We know Arrow was basically ending with Crisis, so they could kill off everyone on Team Arrow if they wanted to. But I don't think they will because of the flashbacks, or the flash forwards, which kind of imply where Arrow is going. And the problem with the flash forwards is that they basically tell us that everyone is still around in some form except for Oliver. The only people we haven't seen the flash forwards is Curtis and Diggle, and we know that Diggle is still out there. So Curtis possibly, but since Curtis isn't a big part of Arrow anymore, it's debatable if he'll even show up in Crisis. So at the moment, Oliver is kind of the only character who I think we could see die. I think we might see Nate from Legends go, maybe Charlie from Legends. Oliver, I think, is either a given or he's going to end up out of the Arrowverse completely. He's going to end up in a different dimension or something. Because in the comics, Superman from Earth 2 stays behind with Superboy Prime and Lex Luthor from Earth 3. Well, Alex Luthor from Earth 3, he's Lex Luthor's son. They stay behind to fight the Anti-Monitor while everyone else goes back to Earth. And in doing so, they defeat the Anti-Monitor, but they get sucked into another dimension, which they stay there for decades. I think we could see something like that. Oliver ends up going head-to-head with the Anti-Monitor. I don't know how they'd make that work because Oliver Queen would get murdered in a second, but I think they could do something similar where Oliver ends up in a different dimension. If that's the case, we can end up seeing no one die in this crossover, which would be interesting. But that's just my thoughts on who I think could die in the crossover. What do you think? Who do you think is going to die? Are you excited for it? And if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I hope you have an awesome day.